When Elon Musk bought Twitter, the reason it was so controversial among many people and so hopeful for many others, such as this program, was because of his very vocal vows to restore free speech to major social media platforms, by which he meant that he would refuse to succumb to the demands, the various tactics imposed typically by power centers in corporate media in the U.S. security state in order to pressure social media companies to ban dissent from establishment orthodoxies. And there's a lot that Elon Musk has done since buying the platform that deserve a lot of credit, that definitely are a fulfillment of those visions. I would say the most praiseworthy thing he has done was open up Twitter's corporate files to allow Matt Taibbi and other journalists the ability to use what is now known as the Twitter files to document just how extreme and aggressive was the pressure by the U.S. security state, the FBI, the CIA, the Homeland Security Department, the various health agencies led by Dr. Fauci to pressure platforms to censor anything they disliked or found challenging to their pieties from social media. He has also restored a lot of accounts that had been previously banned, and I think made it more difficult for Twitter censors to ban accounts. He has often personally intervened, and all of that deserves credit, and I think is a testament to the fact that I do think he means well in terms of the commitments he has made. That said, he is under a lot of pressure. Remember, he bought Twitter for $44 billion. He himself now says that Twitter is worth something like $10 or $15 billion. It is struggling financially. It was struggling financially before he purchased it. And one of the tactics that establishment liberals use, people in the media, people in the liberal activist world, is they try and pressure large corporations to avoid any platform that doesn't obey liberal censorship demands by essentially saying you are associating your product with hate speech or other controversial speech or disinformation, and by doing so you become responsible. Corporations want, above all, to avoid controversy that might harm their brand, and they're very easy to scare away, and he has lost, what Elon Musk has and Twitter has, a lot of corporate advertisers and the massive amounts of money that come with it. It's very difficult to monetize a large social media platform if you don't have the GMs and Fords and Kellogg's of the world that are advertising on your platform. And they have lost a lot of those as a result of Elon Musk's attempt to restore free speech to the platform. Now, as you undoubtedly know, several months ago, Elon Musk stepped down, at least technically, as the CEO of Twitter after conducting a poll asking whether he should. And the person that he appointed raised some eyebrows. It was Linda Yaccarino, and the reason it raised eyebrows was because she has worked for the last several years at NBC News, which I would argue is ground zero for liberal establishment orthodoxies. It was one of the most aggressive spreaders of Russiagate, of the lie that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. In general, it has been on a hiring spree to put on its payroll operatives of the U.S. security state, as well now in the last couple of weeks, as reported on Monday, communications officials from Joe Biden's White House. It really is a propagandistic network, and he didn't just pick somebody from NBC. He picked an executive responsible for courting large corporate advertisers. And the question is, how is she going to do that? Namely, lure back corporate advertisers, unless she promises to reintroduce certain kinds of content moderation policies, i.e. censorship, that assuage their concerns about not being associated with what they regard, or what liberals regard, or what elite circles regard as disinformation or hate speech. That is the conflict Twitter faces. And she, in several appearances in media as well as on Twitter over the last several months, but really escalated over the past week or so, has become increasingly explicit about her intention to implement what sounds a lot like the old censorship regime that Elon Musk clearly hated and was determined to rid the site of. Now, here is something that she said back in May, and I think people are willing to give Elon Musk some space to kind of trust him. He, like I said, has taken meaningful steps that built up some trust and good faith in his willingness to do so. And so back in May when she said this, the question always is Linda Yaccarino pretending that they're going to do more content moderation to lure back corporate advertisers, or are they really going to do it? I mean, I don't think corporate advertisers, who are pretty sophisticated actors, are going to be placated by illusory promises of content moderation if they don't actually implement it. It's the same reason why I have a lot of doubts that very wealthy corporations in Ukraine were willing to pay Hunter Biden a lot of money for a long time simply because of the promise of Joe Biden's interventions on their behalf without actually getting any results. Sophisticated actors don't keep paying Hunter Biden if no benefits ever really come, if they're just promises that he keeps making for access or influence. So I don't think it's a very effective strategy, if that's what it is, for them to pretend they're going to implement content moderation that satisfies corporate advertisers if they're not really going to do it. Nonetheless, here's what she said in May, just as a reminder.
So you've got a massive platform. You have a vision that is a spectrum of just daily open source conversation, and they can conduct their lives, their business, their commerce, whatever they can do on your platform. That's a pretty big vision. But in the middle should be advertising opportunity. That sounds like a great opportunity. I can talk about my brand, I can get my customers to communicate, and then they could also buy stuff. It sounds pretty good, right?
You'll be able to buy things just directly on Twitter. One click, boom, done.
All right, so there she's saying something that seems kind of benign, but it's clearly reflective of the challenge she faces, which is how to get corporate advertisers back on Twitter, how to convince them it's a brand with which they want to associate themselves, and it's a friendly place to market their brand. People wondering, rightly, what that meant, what they intended to do, but I think he had a lot of space. Now the rubber is meeting the road. It's time to explain exactly what these policies actually are. So here was Linda Yaccarino on August 10th, so last week, on Twitter Spaces, where she says on Thursday I'll be on Spaces and then on CNBC to talk about X, that of course is the new name for Twitter. And here are some comments she made about what she envisions Twitter doing essentially now in order to lure back corporate advertisers.
Since acquisitions, we have built brand safety and content moderation tools.
Okay, so already those are alarming words. Safety is the name under which big tech has been censoring. It's this creepy kind of utopian concept that the people who pioneered the internet and big tech can actually create safe spaces for adults to use on the internet, that's their obligation to spread happiness and safety. And she specifically said that she intends to do that with content moderation, which, as I've argued many times, well before Elon Musk took over Twitter, is just a euphemism that journalists use when they're cheering for it for censorship. Nobody ever likes to say they're going to start censoring. Content moderation instead is the phrase they use for it. Listen to the details of how she describes what she's envisioning.
That have never existed before at this company. And we've introduced a new policy to your specific point about hate speech called freedom of speech, not reach. So if you're going to post something that's illegal or against the law, you're gone, zero tolerance. But more importantly, if you're going to post something that is lawful, but it's awful, you get labeled. You get labeled, you get de-amplified, which means it cannot be shared, and it is certainly demonetized. Back to your direct point about brand safety. So they are protected from the risk of being next to that content. And it's also why it's really important to note that once a post is labeled and it can't be shared, and the user sees that, 30% of the time, they take it down themselves. Staggeringly, they take it down.
All right, so there's a lot going on there. What you're saying is that, first of all, when Elon Musk announced his intention to import onto Twitter what he called free speech absolutism, and he was then asked what he meant by that, he gave the answer that I would give if I'm asked that I have given many times when I'm asked that, which is namely that I think social media companies should essentially follow First Amendment law. They're obviously not required to, unless you see them as monopolies, in which case they might be, but assuming they're not, they're obviously not required to follow First Amendment law. The First Amendment governs what states can do, not private corporations. But nonetheless, it's a good guidepost for understanding how free speech should function, which is essentially, as long as it's not illegal, it's permitted under the First Amendment. So pretty much the only thing that you can't do under the First Amendment in terms of expressing speech is you cannot go to a corner where there's a mob gathered and instruct them up to go burn down a house while they have torches, because then you're inciting imminent violence. You can do everything short of that, including defending violence in the abstract, saying, I think our government is so unjust, it's time to engage in violence, it's now justified, and anything short of that. So that was what Elon Musk said his vision would be and that he would follow. If it's not illegal, it won't be banned from Twitter. He violated that very quickly by banning Kanye West after Kanye West went on Alex Jones's show and said something like, I like Hitler, I don't mind Hitler, and then banned Nick Fuentes, the white nationalist, neither of whom said anything arguably illegal. And yet they nonetheless got banned. And when asked, Elon Musk said it was because they were inciting violence, which under the First Amendment framework is not even a close call. They did not do anything that was outside of the bounds of protected speech. But I was willing even there to say, okay, he's not going to be perfect on it. If he's heading in the right direction, I think we should be happy about that. There are realities. It's probably true that corporate brands don't want to be advertising next to somebody who's talking about the virtues of Adolf Hitler. And there's commercial realities that probably is going to make it impossible for him to be perfect. But as long as he's headed in the right direction, then with the right intentions, I think he deserves some space. But having her now talk about not only that if you're illegal, you're gone, which is what he said, but also that if it's lawful but awful, it's going to be severely repressed. And basically no one's going to hear it, which on some level is worse than being banned. If you're being banned, there's at least a knowledge or recognition that they're banning you, that the company has a policy of censoring. But if they're tinkering with the algorithms to make it so that you can't be heard, basically it means that you're just relegated to screaming into oblivion. And in a lot of ways, that's a form of censorship more insidious and subtle, and therefore in a lot of ways more threatening. And of course the question is, what is awful speech? And who determines awful speech? Is it a safety board of the kind that Twitter used to use? Is it consulting with disinformation experts? So the idea that now awful speech in the eyes of unnamed people will now be very aggressively suppressed. Nobody can even share it. So technically you have the right to say it. It's just they'll make sure nobody hears it. Is a form of aggressive censorship no matter how you slice it. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.